Welcome everyone. This is Community Preservation Committee meeting, City Council hearing room, Tuesday, October 1st, 2019 at 6 p.m. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. Could I get a roll call of the committee members?
Jim Soul.
Kristen Cantaro Rivera.
Alan Will.
Jim Souza.
John Brandt.
Victor Farias.
So we're missing Charles Monis, and we just received a letter of resignation from John Francoeur, who was a mayoral appointee. We appreciate the time he spent on our committee. I know in the letter he had said he had a lot of other commitments he had to do, so it was just, he couldn't commit as much time to this. So we appreciate his time on our committee, and we look forward to our next appointee. Is there anyone signed up for citizen input here? Okay. The next item is the accepting of the meeting minutes of September 19th, which I'd like to move to the next meeting if possible. So if someone would make a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
So we move it to the next meeting.
So a motion and a second to move the meeting minutes from September 19th to the next meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Victor made the motion, who seconded it?
John.
John.
I gotta go slow for Jim.
Sorry.
Sorry. Don't worry. We're okay. No worries. We have all night. Next up is the eligibility hearings. We put all of the eligibility projects on the table for tonight because in the eligibility, we're literally here to review the project quickly and see whether the project is or is not eligible and under which category the project falls. So in the past, we've had each applicant come down, talk about the project, but we're not going to do that tonight. We're going to do that in the funding round. I mean, each person will have as much time as they want once we get to the funding with whoever is eligible. So if you move to the next round and fill out the funding application and do all the work involved in that, then you will have your say for the whole entire project at that point. But like I say, we're just here to say if it's eligible or not eligible, and then we will be sending letters in that regard for you to move forward with the funding project. So with that being said, we also have a list of grant possibilities or opportunities, whether it's in historic preservation or watershed protection or open space. Sandy has a list of that. So they're in the office. If someone's interested, we definitely look favorable on a project that tries to solicit other options or funds to help in their compensation for the cost of the project. So if I think it'd behoove anybody to get a copy from her and go through it possibly depending on what category you fall in and see if there's a possibility of any type of funds. I know Mike Labassi here from the land has done that in the past very much so, and I know in his project, as I looked through it already, they're going to be possibly applying for that again. So that type of thing, we really look favorable on a project, so it would be beneficial if you're able to do that. So I just wanted to put it out there again. Sandy will have that list for you to get. The other thing too, depending on the project, nonprofits, it doesn't fall in the category, but if someone submitted a project that really falls under the purview of the city, whether it ends up being like a park department project or a water department project or a city planner or a historical preservation project, actually that would fall into all categories for historic preservation, whether it's a nonprofit or not. There needs to be a letter from the particular department saying that they are on board with these projects. With the city project, if someone, for example, puts an application to put a basketball court in Kennedy Park, that's really going to end up, if it was a private citizen that did it, it's really going to end up falling under the park department. That private citizen is not going to work on that project. The park department is, so that board needs to be on board with it, because they're gonna do the work. If they say we don't wanna do it, you know what, the project's no good. So that's all I'm saying about that. It will depend on your project and where it falls, and we were gonna try and direct you into which department we think you need to speak with as you move forward with your funding round. So with that being said, I think, I don't really have anything else to say generally. We'll just start going through the applicants. Again, it's not really necessary to come down to the front when we call up your application. If we do have a question, we will ask you to come down to answer them on this. But like I say, when you get to the funding round, then everyone is required, and you'll have as much time to explain your project to us, you know. So the first project is the Bank Street Armory. They're asking for $275,000 under historic preservation. And they're looking to do a roof structure and replace of the roof system. So it definitely falls under preservation. I don't know if anybody on the board has any questions on this project.
No, but I'll start the conversation, if that's okay. Just that this is clearly an iconic historic property in the city that's received funding in the past. It's already supposed to have a preservation restriction deed on it. It's important that we continue to work on this property. We do need to hope that the administration comes up with a use plan soon, because as long as it's empty, it's going to be a problem. But that being said, I'm ready to entertain a motion to approve this eligibility.
Okay, so we have a motion to
I'll second
approve.
it.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion on the motion from the board? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Again, this was submitted by Chris Gallagher, who is not here tonight, but I mean, he is the building and grounds person, but we do want letters of approval for a project once you get to the funding. The next project is the Kennedy Park Men's Warming House. This is a project for $250,000 requested to include the removal of wood-framed portion of the exterior walls, windows, and roof, and replacing them with new exterior walls, windows, and roof. So this project is under historic preservation. Do you have any questions from the board?
Again, I think this is another one that's good. I'm actually not 100% sure if that's part of the original park plans, but my understanding that it is,
I
and
believe it was.
I'm leaning toward that it should be approved.
Yeah, this one's by Chris Gallagher also. For this one, it's in a historic park. It's an Olmsted Park, which is he's gonna have to go in front of the Historic Commission, I believe, on this,
And the popcorn.
and the park board. So, we'll notify him of that. Those two, he will need letters of acceptance from both of those boards. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
One second.
Al,
Thank you.
any discussion on the motion? Motion carries. The next project up is tennis court renovation at Kennedy Park, submitted by Chris Gallagher. This project is requested for $317,293. It includes the removal of the 4 tennis courts that are there now, and the chain link fence, and installing a new tennis court and a new 10-foot chain link fence. We have it here under open space and also under recreation, so it fits 2 categories, and if it fits the criteria. Again, this would be one that needed to be a letter from the park board and from the Historic Commission too. Again, it's under Homestead Park, so.
I don't think it meets the criteria for open space. I think, because open space is not
You're right.
requiring open space, but it does fit for
You're right.
recreation, but not open space.
Correct. You're right.
I make a motion to move it on under recreation.
So I have a motion.
I'll second that.
So I have a motion and a second to move the tennis court renovation project under recreation. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any discussion on the motion? Motion carries. Next, give Jim a minute. 30 seconds.
I'll take 30.
Good. don't want to rush you.
Go
Okay,
ahead.
go. The next project up is the Oak Grove Cemetery Gatehouse. This project was submitted by the city of Fall River, Chris Gallagher. There's no exact cost on this one yet, but it does fall under historic preservation category. Several years ago, the archway at the cemetery was funded and renovated, and it came out fantastic. Civitex worked on that, and Mike Keane did a phenomenal job on that project, and so now they will be working. If you want to come up, Ann?
I just wanted to say that.
If you just want to state your name.
Yeah, I'm Ann King from Civitex Architects. I understand Chris Gallagher isn't here.
Yep.
But we have a contract with him right now to do a feasibility study on the gatehouses that's taking place this fall. That's why you don't have a cost estimate yet, because we're
Working on it.
performing that service right now for
Okay.
him. So the intent is for us to do the study as well, so that he has a cost estimate if he's eligible for funding for
Yep.
that funding application.
Okay, thank you. So, being that the project was already funded once, these are the two houses that sit on both sides of the gate and falls under historic preservation. And again, the historical commission would have to be contacted in getting a letter of approval, as well as the park department. So, any discussion on this project?
I'm ready to make a motion to approve this for historic preservation funding.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second to approve this under historic preservation. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is Project Bicentennial Park Boat Ramp. This project is being fund requested is $138,000 under recreation. It is for to increase the capacity of the existing public access boat ramp by adding a floating dock with pylons. So again, it's under recreation. Does anybody have any comments or on this one, or does anybody, well, it was submitted by the city grant writer.
So can I stop? In the past, we discussed that we actually liked the project, but the problem was the question of ownership and the state's involvement. And they didn't have a letter from the state approving the project. So is that in this application this time?
No, well, this is just the eligibility. So that would be going to the funding. So there is, that letter is not here.
Oh, okay,
This is all the.
So as we discussed before, it should
Yeah.
be eligible.
Again, it
whether
should be
they actually
eligible,
pass funding is a different
and you're
story.
right, like last time, we
Okay.
didn't approve it because we didn't have state approval, which is where the ownership lies.
Okay.
But it does fall under recreation. So we have a
Someone open the
motion,
door.
Make a motion to pass it to the next one.
the trumpets are sounding.
Thank you, John.
I second that.
So we have a motion and a second
Second by Victor?
by John. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Again, on that project, we're gonna require him to get some sort of a
Yes.
approval from the state. And then also, this needs to go in front of the park board again. I spoke with Nancy Smith about this yesterday, and I know, obviously, being that the park department has the jurisdiction over the parks, this abuts that, so it does affect them to that extent. So I think they also have to be on board with it too. Next item is the school administration building, the chimney restoration, an existing condition study, and window restoration. It was submitted by the superintendent, Matt Malone. This project is being submitted under historic preservation, and the funding requested is $260,000. We have funded money for this building already. We did the roof on it, and last year they submitted an application for the same exact thing, but then the application was pulled, and I'm glad to see it come back, so it's definitely a building worthy of.
Yeah, so we've determined eligibility in the past. It's property that's listed on the National Registry of Historic Places. It's also in the National Historic District. So
Yeah, it just really
I
fits.
think it's eligible for historic preservation. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
So we have a motion by Jim and a second by John to approve this project. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up is the a project submitted by Terry Sullivan. I believe Paul is here now. Terry retired.
Correct.
And now Paul is taking over his position. So this is for the Barnabas Blossom Workshop Restoration. It's under Historic Preservation. Their funding request is for $250,000. It's the restoration of the Barnabas Blossom Workshop at the Watupper Reservation. Does anybody have any comments on this one, or?
Again, I think it's another property that's been established as historical, and the application is for historical preservation. It meets the basic requirements for historical preservation.
So, someone want to make a motion on it?
I'll make a motion to pass to the next level.
One second.
So we have a motion and a second to move this to the funding round. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next project up is the Quikasham River Rail Trail, Rodman Street Annex. Its applicant is Mike Labarcia. It is being submitted under Open Space and Recreation. The funding requested is $250,000. It's for the expansion, to be used to expand the protected open space footprint of the facility, provide accessible parking for visitors, and potentially build a small playground. One question I have, if you'd come down, Mike, for a second. If you just want to state your name and
Yep.
association here.
Mike Labosh, I work for the Water Department, but this is sort of a side application because it isn't a Water Department
Yep.
asset or
Yep.
mission. thing.
The one thing about it, like the land acquisition can be done under open space, but the thing about the parking lot, I question whether a parking lot, whether the funds can be used for a parking lot. I can see us acquiring the land as open space, but I don't know if CPA funds can actually fund a parking lot. And that's only a question. I think it fits criteria for what the general sense of it is, but that part of it I question. So I don't know if you'd want to look into the CPC website, state website, and just kind of get possibly more information. We will look at it also, once we get to the funding round, but if you want to look at it prior to that, it might not fit.
Yeah,
that
so
part of
so
it.
I'm happy to do that. Different state fundings, such as the drinking water supply, sometimes even though they're funding an open space app, like the one we closed on in June, even though they're funding open space protection, they required us to put parking on that parcel. So I think they see that parking goes hand in hand with open space protection, so, but I will
Yeah,
look
check it out.
at precedents.
And again,
what
once we get
law
the
says.
funding, I mean, I'll look at it also and inquire about it, just to make sure like that the funds can be used for that, that's all.
Okay.
So, but yeah,
Well, if it's falling under two criteria, recreation as well, then couldn't parking also kind of overlap into that because you need a place for people to park in order to access the recreation?
yeah,
too,
that would make
so-
sense. But it was just something that I thought about as far as
It'd be
like,
good to establish.
yeah,
Sure.
just to make sure that that part of it works. And if not, obviously, the other parts would still work. So, any other discussion on this project? Okay. Anybody
I'll make a
Well,
motion
yeah, thank you, Victor. I'll second.
make a motion to,
to move on to the next.
so we have a motion and a second to move this to the funding round.
Yes.
Any discussion on the
Under
motion?
both?
Under open space and
Open
recreation.
space.
Under open space and recreation.
Recreation.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Yes,
Aye.
Jim?
Before we move on, can I just make a mention for the people in the seats that when a project meets multiple criteria, it actually has a higher level. So that double criteria of open space and recreation or
Is
recreation
favorable.
and preservation, rises your application to a higher level. Thank you. Who seconded that?
Yep. John, Victor made the motion. Did you second it, John, or did you?
No, I did.
Okay.
Jim did.
Can I just to be even more detailed, so it's not just that we look at it favorably because it meets 2 criteria, but actually CPA guidelines state that it's more favorable if
Mhm.
it meets.
Yeah.
So that's from the state, not just from us.
Yeah. Next project is Bioreserve Conservation Land Acquisition Readiness Project. It was submitted by Terry Sullivan, now through Paul, I forget. Furlan, sorry about that. Department of Community Utilities. The CPA funding request is for $386,550. It's being submitted under Open Space and Recreation. This funding round, the CPC funds with, this strategy was successful, it says, in the Macomber parcel land acquisition, which closed in 2019. CPC funds provided a 50% local match, qualifying the department to receive over $175,000 from the Drinking Water Supply Protection Grant Program. That meaning this, we did matching funds for this one. They acquired $175,000 on a project from last year, and we matched it with that. So like that kind of a thing is really important, and we're like extremely favorable on projects like that, whether it's grants or whatever is other funds. So I don't know if anybody has any questions for Paul on this one. But it's basically a land acquisition, which we've done several times already, so it definitely fits both recreation and open space.
I do have a question. The recreational aspect, I apologize that I get mixed up with the different areas of the reservation land, where some of it is not accessible, or some of it is accessible, so this wouldn't fall under recreation if it's not in an accessible area, so.
So the strategy was to, these are 3 remaining areas that need protection, undeveloped parcels that are either in the water supply or just conservation. They're all in areas that will be open to the public.
Great. Thank you.
So it would fit open space and recreation.
According to that definition.
Have you applied for that grant already, or is it like not eligible yet to apply for?
The deadline is actually November.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's the same timeline as the Macomber we did last year.
Yep.
So we went to eligibility first, and then, following the timeline, then we went to the drinking water supply.
Yep.
And then while they were considering it, CPC came in, and then that helped the drinking water supply.
oh, good. Yeah, okay. So,
I'll make a motion to move on to the next level.
so we have a motion and a second to move this project onto the funding round. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next project up is preserving the Spencer Macomber Farms. This applicant is Michael Kvasir from Department of Community Utilities again. They're looking to request funds of $350,000 under open space and historic preservation. They gave us 3 options on what we can possibly fund for. I don't believe the first one would work because it talks about demolishing a building, and with historic preservation, we're trying to preserve buildings, so I don't see how that would particularly work. It just, that doesn't fit the CPC criteria. The second option would be to protect the farmland and keep the house either for a lease to a farmer or for another use such as a bioreserve discover center. And the third option is to resell the house potentially to a farmer who might lease the farmland from the city under strict conservation standards. So obviously, there will be much to be said about this and written about this, but again, we're here for eligibility. It does fit under open space, and keeping the house would fit under historic preservation, I believe.
Yeah.
So it's something, again, that would have to go in front of the Historic Commission, possibly,
If it's gonna be under historic preservation.
and possibly the Conservation Board, I don't know.
The thing is, if it goes through under the criteria of historic preservation, there's gonna be a preservation restriction deed put on it, so the house won't be able to be demolished. So that's,
In fact, we can't even pay for a study with that being an option.
You should just stay here, Mike.
Sorry to keep popping up and down.
But it's good exercise to keep walking back.
Yeah,
and
so
forth.
this is another case of, there's a dynamic aspect of working, with a private owner who necessarily hasn't made up his mind
Yep.
or their mind. So just to sort of lay out the possibilities, and I think what you're doing is correct. Depending on which scenario, you certainly limit, we would understand if we're gonna demolish a house, we're not seeking historic preservation. But it's possible one of the scenarios may work out that we are protecting a 150-year-old farm.
Yep.
Collection of farm buildings. So we kind of had to lay out the options
Yep.
and you sort them as you do.
Yep, that's fine, and then like I say, once we get to the funding and you obviously go into a more in-depth explanation of it, we'll be more understanding of it too. So. Any questions?
I mean, it definitely fits the criteria for open space, and under two of those scenarios, it would fit the criteria for historic preservation, so I don't know how we.
Well, it could go under the two. I mean, it's not to say that we have to fund it under two.
Right.
I mean, you could say that and give us the options and let us, once we get to the funding round, if it went through, we could decide whether it's gonna come from historic preservation or
Well,
from open space.
If I can say, by the time, when this gets to funding, this will be decided. We're not gonna give you three scenarios for the funding.
Oh, okay.
We'll have chosen one and we're gonna say this is the one.
Okay, okay. So as long as you're aware of the demolition part of it, that
Alright.
doesn't fit, so, okay. Would anyone like to make a motion on this?
I'll make a motion to fund it under open space and historic preservation.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next one, Mike Kvasir, are you listening? Project title, Preserving Fall River's Small Rural Cemeteries. Kind of exciting, sounds exciting to me, this one. The funding being requested is $50,000. Do you want to just do a brief synopsis on it, Mike?
Yeah, through the course of years working at the reservation, I've come upon many rural cemeteries, and I became aware that there are even more of them, and a lot of them are either hidden, they're not well known, they're not identified well in the city's mapping and so forth. So I've mapped them out, and I've figured there's about 23 of them that are really, they need something, whether they need to be identified, whether they need to be inventoried. And I've looked at the Mass Historical Commission's standards, and they're really good. And one of the things they suggest right off the bat is getting this done professionally, so that they're recognized as being historic, and they kind of create a baseline for care and preservation. So this would find a professional and really contract that work to be done. And the city, at the end of that, would have a nice resource from which to work from.
Okay, thank you. So this is being requested under the historic preservation. Is that pretty much, it's different because, I mean, this typical application, this seems different to me, so I'm not sure.
So historic
It would
studies.
still be.
Yes.
Historic, okay.
It's directly related, like, not like general historic studies won't do it, this is very specific to historic properties, areas.
Just on a side note, for anybody here or anybody watching, I'll put a plug in for, there's a new map by, that Mike had drawn up. It's a map, a trail map and guide of the entire bioreserve. They just received it today. It's fascinating. Mike is really great at hosting walks through the bioreserve, which I've been on one. It was phenomenal. Again, I remember seeing 2 cemeteries in that particular thing. So, I mean, this is exciting. The map's awesome, but I just want to put a plug in for that.
And there's a handful of them in the back, if people want to grab
There's
them.
some in the back, and then they're going to be distributed City Hall, Chamber of Commerce. So, take a walk in the bioreserve.
This won't go This won't fit under the cemetery,
I was just gonna ask that.
Yeah.
Park,
He may have to.
you might have to go in front of the park department also, because they are the ones under the
cemetery, right?
Yes,
jurisdiction
they-
of the
it's
cemeteries.
exactly true, and I requested, and I'm gonna be at their meeting, on the November meeting.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Because I really would like their endorsement on this.
good. Anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second it.
So I have a motion and a second to fund this project 50,000, to move it forward, sorry about that, to move it forward to the funding round. You weren't gonna get the money that easy, Mike, sorry.
Anything worth
Any,
having to replace
any
for.
discussion on the motion? The motion carries. Stay there. The next project is the restoration of the 1873 Waterworks stable. This project is being requested under historic preservation for a funding request of $75,000 to restore the 1873 Waterworks stable. So it definitely fits under the category. Would anybody like to discuss it any further?
I make a motion to move it on to historic preservation.
I'll second that motion.
So I have a motion and a second to move this project to the funding round. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next one, a very interesting project. This one is submitted by Mike Kvasir. The project title is the Mystery Stone Relocation. It's being submitted, requested under historic preservation. Again, this is one I'd like you to give a little minor synopsis on too.
So this is another project that may not happen, but in the course of the year, you know, to have this eligible and potentially ready. And what it is there have been located 5 different millstones out across the bioreserve lands. Some are in the vicinity of the Watuppa Reservation, some are in the Copacabana area. And these are millstones that were probably created by craftsmen in the 1700s, early 1800s. They were millstones that were in various stages of completion, but they're recognizable as millstones. And as they've been discovered over the last 20 years, at first people didn't know what they were, and then archaeologists from Bridgewater University have come up with this millstone theory. So this one in particular, so they're fine where they are, they're in the woods, they're in remote places.
I don't know if everybody can see this, but I'll just put this little photo up there of the millstone, and what is the stone behind it?
That could have been part of the parent stone. In other words, there might have been several stones there. And so it's just a piece of chip off the old block, if you will. So this particular stone may at some point need to be moved if development in or near it is to jeopardize it, and if it was to otherwise be destroyed. So it's not anything we're looking to necessarily jump on, but if the need came, it wouldn't be, you know, it would be costly to move it, preserve it, put it on a site that is preserved. So
Where is the intent to move them to?
it hasn't been identified yet, though it's likely either the Watuppa Reservation or perhaps the Bioreserve Discovery Center, should that come to, you know, to fruition in a timely way. But it would be on a protected, you know, Article 97 protected property, so that we wouldn't have to face this jeopardy again.
Okay. Any other questions for Mike?
I'll just say that I think should pass. I'll be making a motion to approve it. And my only question, the only sticking point would be something to remove an architectural piece from its original site, and you're affecting the original site. And I don't want to get caught up in that kind of quagmire, but otherwise I like the project. I like the idea of bringing it and making them so they can be accessible by the general public. But other than that, I think it's a worthwhile project to look forward to.
The request is for $10,000, by the way. So,
I'll make a motion to move this project forward in historic preservation.
so I have a motion and a second to move this to the funding round. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item up was Terry Sullivan. Originally was the applicant, now it's under Paul Ferland's control here. This is for preservation of historic Fall River water department documents under historic preservation. We've done document preservation already. It totally fits the criteria, so I had no questions. Where will the documents be stored?
So currently they're stored at, we have some at the water department, some here in the vault at City Hall. So we'd like to digitize them so that we have them for years to
Yeah.
come.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, because we did exactly that already.
Same board maps.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to move on to the next.
One second.
So we have a motion by John, a second by Kristen to move this to the funding round. Any discussion or questions? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item up is project securing the Article 97 protection for open space parcels omitted from the bioreserve. This was submitted by Terry Sullivan. The funding request is $30,000. The project seeks to identify the remaining parcels already in the possession, control, and management of the Fall River Water Department and affirm their permanent protection. So it's documents that they're going to be creating, is that correct?
It's, so it's gonna be an additional deed restriction. So similar to when the bioreserve was created and the city was required to file additional conservation restrictions, which is an additional layer of protection on Watuppa Reservation properties. Not all of them were required at that time, so there's a balance of, I think I found 800 acres that have, although they have Article 97 protection already, they don't have that additional, I'm sorry, I'm explaining that wrong. They were actually acquired before Article 97 in the state constitution.
So they don't have it.
So they don't have it. So I think in general, we agree that these are conservation properties. They were bought for the purpose of protecting the water supply. What we want to do is record a superseding document over those. It's been done in other towns where the Conservation Commission lands or other lands that were purchased with city or municipal funds for the specific purpose of drinking water supply protection or conservation. So it's just almost a footnote to an existing note. And so it would be a deed document that says these parcels, and it would notate them, it would name them, it would identify the deed, book and pages of all those documents. All of these properties will now have Article 97 protection. So it's a kind of a legal technicality, but it's one that we're kind of exposed, and it would be nice to wrap that up.
Yeah, well, deed restrictions are one of the more important things of CPC in general. So I mean, that type of a thing is definitely worthy of
Yeah.
funds.
So the funding application will have a lot more detail, and we can do a good amount of that research in-house, and so we'll just
Does the board agree that open space and recreation, or just open
That was
space?
gonna
Open
be,
space.
that was my question.
Yeah,
I hate to
yeah.
be picky about it, but having that
Yeah.
second criteria is a big deal, especially when you compete. with
Yeah,
other-
and it may be a mix, and I don't know if you'll want to sort of annotate that. Some will be in restricted areas, and some may not be. So it's, they're all water supply related parcels.
I mean,
would say open space then,
I think
because.
so too. That's what I was thinking.
Because if
too.
we can't just pick little sections to fund, so I think because they're not all accessible for recreation, you'd have to just go to open space.
That'd be fine.
I think so too.
Would like to make a motion?
Make a motion to move on to open space.
I'll
Next round.
second.
So we have a motion and a second to move this application to the funding round under open space. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Clerk, how are we doing with our typing?
Right on.
Good job. Next project up is, the applicant is Michael Kvasir from Department of Community Utilities, preserving the Watuppa Native American legacy. This project funding request is for $100,000 to develop a restoration and preservation plan for the Watuppa Indian Reservation and to protect by means of a conservation restriction the remaining 95 acres of the original reservation. So again, this is pretty much of a documentation.
It's a little more than that. So, and this is probably the most speculative of all of these applications. And it requires discussions and negotiations with the state as far as, you know, the Indian lands are 100 acres in size, and much of it isn't developable. But it's certainly, as you look at your new bioreserve map, this property is identified on it, and it really does connect other protected lands. So we're just trying to complete the sweep of protection through that property, and also explore the possibility of working with the Native American families that are still in the area, of trying to restore this site, this house actually, it's been on the site for a number of years, and you know, test the feasibility of perhaps it could become a museum, you know, telling the Native American story as it pertains to the Watuppa Reservation. So again, it's kind of yet to be cooked.
Okay. Any other questions for Mike? I do have one comment, though. I'll say, I mean, all the applications are great. We've definitely have been a fan of funding applications in the past. My only thing on it, I would possibly hope that you'll come up with a sort of like a triage list of what project that you submitted you really think is more important to help us narrowing down what we do. I mean, there's a lot of applications and there's a lot of funds, but if you would come up with like a list of what you think was the most important, I think it'll be helpful for us too, as opposed to like maybe funding you on something and you, wow, that one would have been a better one. You know, so if you can help us in that department,
Yeah.
I think that'd be kind of good.
So I think that would be completely appropriate for the next round.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
You know, certainly, some of these may not be ready.
Yeah.
Some of these need to be prioritized.
Yeah, and my only reason of saying is so you'll think about it as we move to funding. You know, like which one you think, wow, this one would be better or not so good. Like you say, some of them might not even happen by that time.
Mhm.
So just a comment.
Perfect.
So, we have a motion?
Make a motion to move to the next round.
Second, yes.
So we have a motion and a second to move this to the funding round under open space. Any other questions?
And historic preservation?
And historic preservation, sorry. Yep. Open space and historic preservation. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item up is submitted by Ken Reposa from the Little Theater of Fall River. We have funded a study for them. This funding request is for $200,000. Does anybody, we obviously funded this before under historic preservation. It's for the continuation of the restoration of the fire, the Little Theater fire bond. Any other questions on this for Ken, or?
Make a motion to move on.
Yeah, well, I just want to mention that for this project, this is a property that's already recognized as an iconic historical, or National Register historical property in the city. We've funded in the past, so I agree with John. John, I'll take your motion and I'll second it.
So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item up is submitted by Tony Cadero. It's for the Trolley Building, which we funded last year. This project is being requested under historic preservation. Community housing funding request for this one is for $300,000 to continue the rest of the conversion into market rate apartments here.
This is another property that we had passed the eligibility muster in the past because it's historic nature and the plan to create affordable housing, market rate affordable housing, not low income level. So I think it does pass muster for eligibility for those two criteria. To make a motion to move forward.
So I have a motion by Jim, second by Kristen to move this project to the funding round under historic preservation and community housing. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And second, Jim.
Okay. 9, 8.
Two.
Wow, you're good. Quick. Next project is submitted by Jeffrey Griffin. from the Corky Road Club. It's for the Corky Road Club. They're requesting $50,000 under historic preservation to repair the exterior facade of the building, as well as reinforce the bar area of the interior and with structural repairs. My only question that I would have is whether funds can actually be used for like just the bar area part of it. I look forward to the funding part to see how that clarifies to that as far as the historical nature of that part of it.
Yeah,
They definitely go for the outside.
for the exterior, and I think what we heard from Stuart in the past, he's our representative for the state, was that for a private, even a private non-profit organization, that it could be approved for the exterior, but even the study itself has to be specifically for the exterior. That we can't pay for the interior
Yeah.
Restoration.
restoration.
Because the interior was even originally a bar.
So
Because, I mean,
is
it's-
Jeffrey Griffin here?
I can
Okay,
speak to
yeah.
that.
If you want to just state your name and,
Ken Viola, Bristol County Economic Development Consultants. So the application is for, as you said, the facade of the building. The interior improvements are not necessarily for the bar. It's the flooring underneath the original part of the building that's sagging a little bit, so it'd be the support
okay.
to prop up the
Yeah,
floor.
like new lolly columns, new
Yeah,
lolly columns or whatever.
exactly. So the other
Okay.
50,000, it's a very small component.
Yep.
But they just wanted to make sure, because the original building itself is now sagging a little
Yep.
bit, so it's the lolly column support
Okay.
underneath.
Then that counts.
Yeah.
Structurally, yes.
Got it,
Yep.
okay.
I
Thank
did
you.
ask Jim to.
I like bars, don't get me wrong.
I thought this was a good project, being that Corky Row is a historic, you know,
Absolutely.
and a big thing in that
Yes.
neighborhood, so I said, you know, try putting an application in to
Yeah.
kind of spruce it up.
And it is an area that really needs some love.
One more thing we have to establish, and it's not too late if it's not, but the property should be entered on the significant property listing. And I think it should qualify, I know it's not super very old, but it should be old enough to meet state age requirements. And then it should make the requirements based on its cultural contribution to the city. But we need to make that, it should be referred to the historic.
So you should probably go to the historic, it sounds like we'll be moving it forward, so it sounds like the sooner you get to the historic commission to start the process here on that, it would be beneficial.
It was
So
built
what
in
I'll just say is
1982.
anybody that
It's
has
actually-
to,
I'm sorry, it's actually built in 1936. 36, that's a typo.
Okay.
so anybody that needs anything from the historical commission after this, at the end of the meeting, I'll have my cards with me and they'll have my email and phone number, so
36.
that way you can get in touch with me and we can set that up for one of our meetings.
Yeah, so,
But I'll make a motion to accept this project, move
I'll
forward.
second that.
so we have a motion and a second to move this project to the funding round. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Next project up is submitted by Ken Viola. It's for the Cherry and Webb building, and it's for a new roof to that building. It's being requested for $110,000 under historic preservation. So we've done roof in the past. It's definitely, it was built in 1916, it definitely would fit the criteria. Do they need to go in front of the historic commission to get a letter?
To get a letter,
Yep.
yeah, just a letter of support, it helps.
So, any other questions for this?
I make a motion to move on to the next
I'll
project.
second.
So we have a motion by John, a second by Kristen to move this to the funding round. All in favor?
Right.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item up is submitted by Robert Karam for the Adams House on Highland Avenue, being requested $500,000 under historic preservation and community housing for asbestos removal. Does anybody want to come up and just discuss this a little bit? We'll take a little brief synopsis on this if you want to come up. Yeah, we'd love to see you here. We just want to state your name and address.
Robert Karam, 500 Albany Street, Fall River, Massachusetts.
Yeah, so just gives a little brief description on what the funding will be for.
Well, when we got into the building, we discovered that there is a lot of asbestos in that building. So we really need, I think the estimate, we brought 3 different asbestos people in, and the lowest estimate is about $450,000 to remove it, because we have to remove it and protect the historical at the same time. It is really gonna be very difficult. It's gonna get done, but it's very expensive.
Yep.
And so we're looking for other funds, historical funds or what have you, and private funds. Bay Coast Bank is a lender to do the whole project. And so that's specifically where we look at coming to you for that money.
Okay.
Okay. The other one point I'd make is, I heard you say the more those circles you draw, the better we look.
Yeah.
So we are preserving, I would think, about 8 or 9 beech trees that are in excess of 80 years old on the site. So we are retaining a lot of the site. We are gonna put some houses on Adams Street, 3 spot lots for some houses, and 1 on Highland Avenue. But we're gonna leave a lot of land, and we purposely moved everything around, and we'll show it to you at that meeting, where
Okay.
we're preserving a lot of the land and preserving the trees. I didn't even know about the trees until my engineer said, you can't take those trees.
They're massive, yeah.
And well, it's not only massive, he says, they'll kill you, they're 80 to 100 years old, so
Yeah.
you're saving the building and you're killing a 100-year-old tree, so
Yeah.
we're gonna save the trees.
I knew about it because I read the proposal, because I had to send a letter.
You watch
for
this
you to
closely,
the
is that
state.
it?
No, because I had to write a letter for you for your state funding.
Yes, yes.
So I knew about the trees.
Yes,
Yes,
and the trees are beautiful.
they
so-
really are.
Yeah, they are.
Okay.
Any other questions for Rob?
I'll mention that it's clearly an iconic property. I think people are thrilled. We heard it's going up for sale. A lot of us were concerned what's going to happen to it. It's a historical property, national, I think it's national
It
register,
is
national
national.
It is,
register eligible. And so it falls under historic preservation and community housing.
Great. So
Thank you.
we have a motion for this? So we have a motion and a second to move this project to the funding round under historic preservation and community housing. All in favor? Any opposed?
Did you say open space?
No.
Not quite.
Will we have a golf course on there too for recreation?
Just for you, buddy. Just for you.
Okay. Next project up is the Fall River Fire Museum. We have funded them in the past several times. This was submitted by Mike LePage for the Anawan No. 6 restoration project. Their funding request is for $498,600 under historic preservation. Anybody have any? We've obviously funded it before.
I mean, we know it meets the
Fits the criteria
criteria.
totally. Any questions for Mike or any questions in general?
I'll just say that it's gonna, I'm gonna move forward, I'm gonna make a motion to move forward before I just want to say that there's an outstanding application on the table. So come January, you're gonna have to pick like one or the other. I don't think we can have both outstanding projects. So, that would be good.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to,
I'll second the motion.
So we have a motion and a second to move this to the funding round under historic preservation. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item up is submitted by Elizabeth York, Director of Collections from the Maritime Museum at Battleship Cove. The project is an HVAC system at the Maritime Museum, Phase 2. For the funding request is for $400,000. Again, it's for an HVAC on the first and second floor of the museum. We've funded them in the past also, so.
So we know it meets the criteria.
Yeah, because, I mean, this preservation project is to preserve the artifacts, not so much the structure. It's to preserve the articles that they own. So it does fit the criteria. Does anybody have any questions? Anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
So we have a motion and a second by John. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item up, submitted by James Padilha and Azar Padilha Realty Trust. This project is for a feasibility study with Michael Keane of Civitex Architecture. I don't know if you, Jim and Jean, if you want to come down, just to give us a brief synopsis again of this particular project. It's being requested for $50,000 under historic preservation. You just state your name, please, and address.
Hi,
Hello.
I'm the talker.
She's the top.
What a surprise.
Oh, we know that.
Jean and Jim Padilha, and so we own the property 3656 Water Street in Fall River, in Battleship Cove, Fall River's waterfront, and have for about 22 years, I think. So we have owned that property, and as time goes on, there are many things that, obviously things that need to be done. We were made aware of this fund, and to be quite honest, there are so many things that could use doing
Yep.
to preserve this building. We did find that it is both city historic and also on the National Register, and so the building is historic. It's part of the Fall River waterfront revitalization, and it is our goal and aim to improve the property. So to begin with, because we wouldn't really know where to begin,
To
Yeah.
start.
we were advised by many wonderful people in the
Yeah.
room, thank you so much, that it would be the best thing to start with a feasibility study.
Yeah, we like that.
And it was recommended, that we do that, because
It is part of the whole historical part of that whole area.
Yeah,
The
we've learned
building
from our,
goes back.
we've learned from our mistakes by not starting with a feasibility study, and this is definitely the recommendation and the way the board, I still always have to credit Tony Dias, who was on our board for several years, who finally got it drilled in our head, and it made so much sense to
well,
go this way.
we met
So
him as well,
I
and he
still-
was so helpful.
Still appreciate his past work.
Right. We appreciate him too.
Yeah.
It was great meeting him, and Kristen and Sandy and Dave.
Yeah.
And we just appreciate all the help we've gotten, because we just were not aware.
Yeah.
But here we are, and we've invested our lives
Yeah.
here, and in residents of Fall River forever, so we appreciate your consideration.
So it does fit.
Little problem. So for private projects, that can fit, especially because it's National Register property, but it really has to be for exterior facade work. So when you have private nonprofit organizations like museums or community housing, it can be eligible for interior things because there's a greater public use. But when it's specifically private, even though you have functions and things, it's really for private venue. So it can be eligible, but it's really for exterior facade work. And once, we're really not supposed to cover. But the scope of work entails, yeah.
Potential, those were just,
Yeah.
really, those were just,
Do you want to read what you're referencing?
Yeah. So the scope of work includes a comprehensive review of existing building conditions.
Speak a little bit louder, Jim, just.
The scope of work includes a comprehensive review of existing building conditions, including mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, and a structural evaluation report, and a review of existing interior and exterior finish conditions. So the actual end of that sentence, exterior finish, perfect, especially if it's going to go toward historic preservation of the building, which would be great.
yeah, absolutely.
I actually don't know what the structural is, but I mean,
No, some structures.
I don't know if that's true. We just had an email from Stuart, and it's pretty clear that private projects is really only supposed to be geared toward exterior facade. Is that the way you read it? Or-
Yes, I did.
I don't want to go overboard, but.
So it doesn't count for
Well-
shoring up floors and things like that as well? I thought, to preserve the actual structure of the building.
But like you said, not for private,
Private.
for non-profit or a municipal property.
You have private, private is actually split into two. There's private, non-profit, there's private, for-profit. So private, for-private is a more strict classification. Private, when they do it for community housing, if they're gonna have a housing restriction deed, that's a different criteria because of the housing aspect. But private, it's a tighter criteria.
Some of this would fit under historic preservation, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
So basically, the project is eligible, correct?
Yes.
But the recommendation, I would think, would be to look into the coalition's website to check on, you can actually call them too. Contact them and even with a question like of your project, and they'll tell you whether it's a private property.
Okay.
They'll give you information also.
Okay.
So maybe that would be a good thing, moving into the funding round to do.
Right.
So you'll know for sure if it is or it isn't.
Sure.
But for us, it seems okay now. We would have to look at the application, and then that's when we would kind of dig into the research a little bit ourselves for it. But you might want to do that going into the funding round, because part of it is eligible, so I believe.
We don't want to scare you off, we like to build.
Yeah, but this is only our recommendation, so you'll know whether the
Right.
funds are actually, if you actually really are eligible, you'll know by that. This way, you're not kind of wasting a lot of your own time and energy,
Right.
so.
And we don't have the knowledge.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
to be honest,
Yeah.
So, the Community Preservation Coalition, if you go on the website where you got the eligible project, Sandy will tell you.
Sandy will help.
Yep, she'll tell you where,
Yeah.
and then you can contact them, and I think they'll also help you on that.
Okay.
So,
And we also know that Lincoln and Keene from Civitex are on, and they're very familiar with our work, so we can communicate with them
Okay.
Right.
as needed.
okay. So, does someone want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to accept this project and move it forward. We'll leave it at that.
Okay.
I'll just put it in the notes that we discussed the actual scope itself.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to move this forward to the funding under historic preservation. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next item up is submitted by David Jennings, the Lafayette Durfee Restoration, which we've funded for several years now. I mean, I have to give a shout out to this project because they've done an incredible job. I mean, at this point, I don't even remember exactly how much we've actually funded them. Probably upwards of $1 million, or possibly $500,000 to $1 million. But they've did an incredible restoration. If anyone has the opportunity to go to any of their events, they are incredible. It's all colonialism. The building was built 1756, I believe. But most of their events too are actually free. I mean, there's actually one I'm going to that's hearth cooking. I'm gonna $75, but that one, most of their events that they do are free, and their reason is because the city has given so much back to them to restore this building. They don't feel like they want to have a admission charge, and they don't feel like they want to charge for events because they feel like they've gotten so much already. So. Again, we've funded them before. They're asking for $130,000 for ADA compliancy to this building now under historic preservation, and that's all I got to say about it. Anybody else?
I'll make a motion to move it on to historic preservation.
So I have a motion by John and a second by Victor to move it to funding under historic preservation. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item up is applicant is Charles and Gloria Jacobson. The project is the Massasoit Firehouse on Freedom Street in Fall River to include the repair, restoration of the existing windows and doors, including basement windows, masonry repointing, and replacement where brick is in disrepair, and the installation of new copper gutters and downspouts. The funding requested is for $93,000 under historic preservation and community housing. Any questions or comments by the board?
My only comment is to make sure that when he's getting quotes that they're stored to the state requirements. It's not a bricklayer off the street.
Okay.
Credibility of.
Yeah. Any other,
Oh, by the way, I could add that,
do you want to just state your name? Do you want to come up here and just
No, I
state?
don't.
Okay, then I'd like you to state your name and your
Okay.
address at least.
Chuck Jacobson and wifey Gloria, we own the fire station.
And your address is?
Rock Street, 388 Rock.
Thank you.
I have no room for a golf course.
Okay. Wait, not under recreation. Okay,
I gotta type that.
any, motion for anyone?
I'll make a motion to move on to the next round.
Do I have a second or no?
Oh, second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to move this to the next round under historic preservation. All in favor?
Wait, there's two check those, community housing as well.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right, under community housing and historic preservation, correct. Thank you. Any, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item up is the feasibility study. This was submitted by David Lavoie, the King Philip Yacht Club. It's a feasibility study for a breakwater. The funding requested is for $35,000 under open space and recreation. Does anybody have any comment, or any
Yeah.
board member have any thought on this, eligible?
I don't know that there's been a precedent made across the state to allow CPA money to be used in this manner. And I,
Is David Lavoie here? No.
it doesn't meet recreation because it's not creating.
It's a breakwater.
recreation.
It's a breakwater, so I mean, I'm not sure, how would that create recreation?
It's really not purchasing open
It's not open
space.
space.
Yeah.
Is
I'm
it
sure it's an
the-
important project for them. I get it. I've had friends who are members of King Philip Yacht Club, and I'd love to see them continue on and be strong. I just don't think that
I
this
agree.
application quite makes it.
Would anybody like to make any sort of a motion for anything?
I'll go on a limb and make a motion to deny this application for eligibility.
So we have a motion by Jim, a second by John to deny this, as we believe this doesn't fit under either criteria for building a breakwater to this. So all in favor of the motion to deny? Does anybody want to approve it? The motion carries to deny.
Second. Thank you, John.
Next item up is submitted by the Coalition for Responsible Sitting of LNG Facilities. The project title is a feasibility study for recreational facilities at Weaver Cove. They are requesting funds of $55,000 to apply for funding to prepare a feasibility study for a site that would include a major recreational facility in the city.
Can I start?
Yes.
So I don't think this is going to qualify. I like the idea, and I actually would like to hear about it a little bit if the board wouldn't mind.
Sure.
But what the precedent we've set in the past is that applications have to come from the owners. And so this is a product that's important to me, as you know, Joe, so come up and at least give us a sell.
Sure. Glad to.
So if you just want to state your name
Yep.
and address, please.
Joe Cavallo, 575 Eastern Avenue, Fall River, President of the Coalition for Responsible Siting of LNG Facilities. We've been in existence since 2003.
So it's a nonprofit organization,
50,
501c3?
yes.
Yep.
And incorporated as a nonprofit with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts as well. So, and to Jim's point, yes, it's privately owned. And the owner currently also owns Mount Top coal plant in Somerset. And, just as a back story, owns 2 dumps one in Newburyport and one in Everett, Massachusetts. And the intention here is actually, because we've approached every mayor from Ed Lambert on to take the property by eminent domain. Now, certainly, the previous owners, Weaver's Cove Energy, Hess LNG, which we fought for 8 years until they pulled their permits with FERC to build a LNG import terminal there, had paid $16.2 million for the land. So we were kind of set back because, as in Mayor Lambert's position, if they paid 16.5, if the city were to take the land by eminent domain, a judge could rule that the perceived profits of such a project, LNG import terminal, would be prohibitive for the city to afford it. Now, we come to the present day, and Mr. Tebow bought the property for $1.2 million. So, I guess the backdrop for us is if we could have a mayor take the land by eminent domain, that the top price for the land wouldn't exceed what the owner, the current owner, paid for it. And I would add as well that a proposal, there was almost a purchase and sale agreement from Mr. Tebow to Copart, which is a multinational junkyard company. They wanted to buy the land and have junk cars be placed on the 73 acres. I mean, it's like bad ideas to worse.
That idea is in a good location.
So the thought is, and we really do believe that it encompasses several of the areas, CPA areas, categories. And of course, the hope is, since the land has been fallow for God knows how many years now, that this proposal could see such benefits for the city: open space, recreation, even a marina, you know. And I'm not a boater, but a lot of people have told me that there are few slips that can be secured from here to Newport, and even the ones that are open the cost is prohibitive. And I don't know that, that's what I've been told. So the idea being that if we had a feasibility study, then we could present that to whoever the mayor is in the future, and have that mayor proceed with taking the land by eminent domain, and then going with the plan, which of course Mr. Lima was the architect of.
But the nonprofit doesn't own the property, correct?
Not yet, no.
That's the problem.
That's the problem.
That's the problem right there.
And I think our board would feel like.
You'd have to get a letter from him
because
stating
the
that it's
project
okay to
is
do
so
that.
important.
Because I think it's really, like what you're saying makes a lot of sense, and I really like the idea, but I don't think we can fund it just because of that reason. Like, just because I think it's a good idea. Like, it needs to fall into someone's purview, and it doesn't seem like it does.
Yeah.
Because I think it hinging on whether or not a mayor decides to take it by eminent domain is probably a risky.
Well, the funny thing is
In the
this
first
board
place.
could be used to purchase the land. If there was a proposal to purchase the land
right.
outright.
Right.
And if it was willing to be maintained as open space or recreation, that would be an option. But we can't change the application at this point either. I don't think.
Right.
The idea that was at least talked about was And I love that idea. You don't know how much. So 16 years out of my life has been involved in this project. And one of the other possibilities had been, a couple of mayors had talked about the redevelopment authority being the agent to take it by eminent domain. And again, it's never going to be as attainable in terms of dollars and cents, given that Mr. Tebow paid 1.2. So that's basically where we're at. And we will regroup and see if in fact, you know, a lot of stuff is up in the air, obviously. And we will meet again and see what we can come up with. However, I mean, this plan, and even a previous mayor that had put together the task force for the reuse of the land, there were 9 different proposals presented. We had public hearings, we had people come to those and present ideas. One, of course, was an ill-conceived casino before they were even legal in the Commonwealth. And this plan, out of the 9, came out as number 1. The public voted on them. That was the proposal that was seen as the most beneficial, not only for the North End neighborhood, but for the city as a whole, and even the region, because, you know, our fight went from here to Newport. We presented before the city councils and town councils.
Yeah, like Jim was saying though, if it was for land acquisition, it
Yeah.
would make total sense, but I don't see how it fits. I don't see how we can fit it into eligibility, on my own opinion, but.
Yeah, I thought the owner's consent, I mean.
Would anybody like to make a thank you, Joe?
You're welcome. Thank you for the time.
Make a motion to deny the project.
And I'll second it.
So we have a motion to deny this project, and we have a second to deny it. Any other discussion on this? All in favor of the motion? Aye. Any opposed?
So if I could, just as a point of reference for me personally,
Yep,
so when and if things change,
yep.
then we could be back.
Yeah, land acquisitions are like perfect for this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would have to be a really creative application though, because of its status and such not, but it would be, technically it could be eligible.
Thank you.
Joe. Thanks, Joe. Next item up is the Eagle Event Center. We had funded the Eagle in the past. This is an application submitted by Jerry Donovan from the Eagle Performing Arts and Event Center. It's for, the funding request is for $338,250 to complete handicap accessibility for all in the building. Anybody have any comments? It's under, the request is under historic preservation. Would anybody like to have Jerry come down? Any questions for Jerry?
I'll just, Jerry can come down. I will say that I think we have the same issue that we had with the other project. This is a private property, privately owned, and it really bound to use money used for studies, but has to be for exterior facade.
Because are you Jerry, you just want to state your name and address?
Jerry Donovan, Eagle Event Center,
Any address?
16 Bedford, Florida, Mass.
So is it a nonprofit organization that's asking for the funds, or?
No, it's the same as the last
Okay.
name, profit
All right.
organization.
Okay,
And the last time we requested $80,000 in funds, it was suggested by the board that we hire an architect to do the bulk of the work. We had this project in initially, but we did a feasibility study. We've had a roof put on the building, which we thank you for.
Yep.
The Eagle thanks you, it's dry now. And we're working with William Stock Architects, and they've completed about $10,000 worth of work out of the $50,000 that was granted, and this is where we would like to go for the future.
So I'll let Jim speak for you.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't on the board before, and I know that things changed. I know we've met with Stuart Saginaw twice in less than 12 months about how we were appropriating CPA funding in the past, and the state has been kind of clear. I think all of us put out were at the meeting with Stuart last fall, and he told us that for private projects.
Well, as part of the project here, we're planning on redeveloping the third floor, which is vacant space and was unusable, and we're going to create a historic museum, and the elevator will reach that, and that will be free to the public to get a history of the
Did you
city.
have a letter from Stuart? I just want to say I apologize because this has been a traditional time for CPA. We have had to make adjustments in the way we awarded grants.
Well, if you stick to just the outside for private with the marquee construction being.
Yeah, exterior facade work is encouraged. That's what we'd really like to see private business owners.
Where was it? Where was
historic
it? This
buildings.
is the letter. I don't know if you remember exactly what.
On private projects, the public benefit is for the exterior elements of the historic structure to ensure that the property is contributing to the historic character of the city. In most cases, the preservation restriction would still be required on the building.
Again,
That's it.
it's because it's a private project. As opposed to if it was a nonprofit or municipal property, it's different, it changes because of those two criterias.
If you were an established nonprofit and you were open something new, open space, that could be considered.
Like,
Really as a private
like you say, the
entity.
roof is exterior, it was funded.
Yeah.
Well, in the proposal, the roof is, the other part of the roof is in there. There's many aspects that pertain to the exterior of the building in the proposal and the feasibility study. It's not just the elevator and the handicap bathrooms.
Well, in the project description, it says will allow all to complete handicap accessibility for all to visit. That's in the project description.
Right, and there's additionals. Paul, you want to come down? Paul's been working diligently on this project for about 6 months.
Yeah.
Paul Rico with Stark Architects, 126 Cove Street in Fall River. So, I was unaware of the exterior nature of the, I thought that handicap access was also a qualifying factor in historic preservation, but learned something new tonight. But the nature of the project, other than the handicap bathrooms, is all exterior. As far as the elevator is concerned, I mean, I'm asking the question. Because we're adding the elevator on the back side of the building and changing that exterior facade, would that qualify or
That
not?
actually would make it ineligible.
Really?
I mean, the property itself meets historic preservation eligibility in itself.
Yeah.
But the application, as I told Ms. Keane earlier, the application would have to be specifically for exterior facade study and work, preservation work.
We've just clarified that ourselves this past year.
Yeah, we met with Stuart Saginaw 1 year ago, and we actually just re-reviewed that with him just within the last 2 weeks, because we had so many applications that were asking us to be a little more liberal. And we don't, I know the projects that happened before I came on this committee. They're good projects, we like them, they're good for the city. It's not that we're against it, but we have to follow the state guidelines, or we're gonna get ourselves in hot water. If someone else reads it a different way,
I agree with you. I mean, I'm the one who sent a letter to Stuart at the coalition, and that's what our response was on that.
it does make a distinguishment between private versus private, non-profit, because of the public.
So we are eligible for exterior facade work. If we
Windows,
limit this
doors.
project just to that and do the handicap ourselves.
So would that require amending our application, or?
I mean, so I'm thinking that we could accept the application for eligibility
Go to funding.
with a note that it have to be amended,
Yeah.
and on the funding application, make those amendments.
It sounds fair.
That's fine.
Thank you. Give me 1 full minute to write my notes.
Okay. Yeah, so like I say, we're here also to guide people in the direction, and like I say, this past year, really realized the capability of a project when it becomes a private as opposed to a nonprofit or a municipal property.
If
So,
we turned it into apartments, we'd be okay.
yeah, I don't want it to be a beautiful ballroom for one person upstairs, though. A nice big living room.
I assume you're all familiar with the space,
We are.
beautiful.
I am.
it
I
is,
mean,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
probably one of the most beautiful
Yeah.
interiors in our city, I would say.
And it's just a shame that there's no handicap access,
Correct.
but,
Yeah.
maybe we can,
But we agree.
yeah,
It's just this particular board,
Yeah.
we're not supposed to go.
I understand,
And we want business downtown too.
yeah.
So, would anybody like to make a motion on this?
I'll make a motion
For?
for handicap accessible.
No, we can't do that.
Can't do that. Could be amended outside exterior work.
Exterior.
We just voting on whether just it's eligible for stuff that we.
We'll make an
Yes.
motion, let him change it to exterior outside work.
Well,
Yes.
well,
No, he's
that's,
gonna
that's,
change it
that's,
after.
it's gonna change, but Kristen, would you like to make the motion instead?
Yeah, I make a motion that we move this forward under historic preservation.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second to move this project under historic preservation to the funding round. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, and obviously you're aware of our recommendations too.
Right. I have one last question for Ms. Oliver. So we should come and see you about a letter of sort of support from the historic commission too, or? Yeah, all right.
For the
Yeah.
historical aspect.
Yeah, so it really,
Yeah.
any project that has a historical preservation condition or criteria should go through the historic commission. I mean, that's one thing that's in the past, has been sort of, the first few years has been lax, but I mean,
Yeah.
they really, everybody should get a letter from the historic commission, and they will, check the criteria to make sure it fits.
So I think the direction we're gonna go in is to bring this exterior of the building back to the way it was in 1929. Apply for funding that way. Really bring out,
Mm-hmm.
I was downtown New Bedford yesterday, and
Yeah,
it preserved so much.
yeah,
And if the eagle could be addressed from the outside,
yeah,
leading you into the inside, I think would be okay.
yeah.
Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Those are my other ones. Next item is submitted by Helen Rigo of the Niagara Neighborhood Association. The project is a feasibility study for the Niagara Quikasham River Greenway. Project is being submitted under recreation, and funding requested is $60,000.
I would like to mention that I have been involved with preparing applications, so I won't be voting on the issue, but if there's some question that needs to be answered.
You can definitely vote on eligibility here, though. Like, I don't see why you can't vote. I mean, we're not asking for funds, we're just asking to move this to the funding round, so I think that you're eligible to vote on just whether you think it's eligible or not. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know how everybody else feels. You know, because like I say, we're not asking for funding here, so. My one question, is Helen here? Oh, okay. Have you spoke with the city planner about this project yet?
No.
Okay.
No, not yet.
And that would definitely be a major,
Yes.
thing, I mean, to make sure he's on, to make sure he's on board. Because I know he has a lot on his plate, we've dumped a lot on his plate, and I just wanna make sure he's ready to accept another project, in that regard. So, it does fit, I believe, under recreation. So I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on it, or questions, or?
Just that, it's gonna have to have a letter of approval from Bill Roth.
Yeah.
Before it goes to funding.
Yes.
Make a motion to move on to recreation.
So we have a motion and a second to move this to the funding round under recreation. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next project up is submitted by Timothy Bennett of Green Futures. It's for a feasibility study to daylight the Quikasham River. This project is being submitted under open space, under recreation, and under historic preservation for the amount they were requesting of $80,000. Is Timothy here?
No, but I'm representing.
Okay, if you would come up and just state your name and address. One question I just had on is any of the daylighting that's being thought of is under state property? Or is it, you know what I mean, like, what's under city property, what's under state property?
Yes, the Department of Transportation is the one that buried the Quikasham.
Yep.
And they own a lot of the infrastructure.
Okay,
By the way, my name is Jeff Harrow, 35 Ballard Street, Fall River.
okay. So being that it's state, it's mostly state property that it's part of, or no?
I wouldn't say it's all state property.
So the city, I also took part in preparing this application. The city does own the water, that would be released as part of this plan. It is partly on state property, but partly on other property too.
Mm-hmm.
So the issue is whether can we provide a larger plan that shows what the
possibility
daylighting
is.
would look like.
Yep.
We've done one engineering study, and they recommended that we do another engineering study, which is fine, but it wouldn't address the issue of why we want to daylight the river and why we need to show it. There's been no perspective on or any other kind of plan that really shows what it might look like. And I think that would address this, essentially, a feasibility study.
Right. We could grant phase one. We did the engineering study just to see where the river could be uncovered. Phase two, like Al said, is just to get people excited, get them to understand the vision of what daylighting the falls would mean to the city.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that we're treading on a risky business.
As far as our funds?
Not our funds, on our eligibility criteria. So we okayed the last study, eligibility, because that's kind of an ongoing part of the rail trails already in process. And that's a city project. So we declined the Weaver's Cove because that's privately owned land, and we're trying to do a study on property that doesn't belong to them. And now we're doing it again, and this is land that's city versus state owned. And the muddy part is that according to what Stuart at the state level has told us, was that when we do study reports, it has to be something that we can guarantee we're going to be able to move forward on. So to do visionary studies that may or may not pay off,
Where's the benefit?
where's the benefit? And we do, so I'll just give an example. We had Kingfield Mill, we had done the study the very first year. But at the end of the day, people who owned the building and the land didn't move forward with the recommendations of the study. And then we actually had a fight with whether we were going to sue the city to get the money back because they didn't follow CPA plans. There was no lawsuit there, it wasn't going to happen. But the state told us we're not supposed to be funding projects that can't come to fruition. Like Mike Kvasir's project, one of his plans was buying a piece of property in a historic building and tearing the historic building down. Well, we know right off the bat that that can't be covered by CPA. I feel like I'm the jerk tonight.
Tonight?
And I want anybody to.
Just tonight?
Please argue and debate with me. I just don't want us to fall
No,
into a bad.
No, I agree.
No,
That's why I brought up the
sure.
question about state property. And I think the city, like, and again, another one about state property is the boat ramp that we question on. They brought it in front of us last year. We found out the city didn't own that parcel of property, we'll call it, the water, whatever it is. So we actually denied it because it was state property, not city property. And I feel like this, obviously, it's in Fall River. Some of it has to be Fall River somehow, but I think a lot of it's not. So, I mean, do we fund this? That's the way that's where I
Sure.
really question. It seems so, there's so much gray area here, I'm confused.
But haven't you approved projects where, you know, the proposal wants to purchase private land, you know, to make it part of the bioreserve?
Well, yeah, we have done that.
Right,
You
so-
can't purchase just state land, like this is something that's owned by the state. You're not purchasing the land.
That being said, if you want to put a proposal to purchase the land,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't be humorous about it, but that is the
Yeah.
difference.
No, I mean, your passion, I think, is, like, I think anybody who lives in Fall River has the passion of, we want the Quikasham Falls back. I understand that totally, because, I mean, I look at the pictures and it kills me to see that 26-foot waterfall not here anymore. So I totally understand your passion, but we're just, as a board, trying to do what we're supposed to
Sure.
with the state, that's all. And when it comes to the state when it comes to I'll just say the state, like, parts of it, I'm very skeptical on it, so I don't feel comfortable with it. You know, that's, like, I didn't feel comfortable with the boat ramp that we denied.
And I think
Yeah.
too, in the past, we had an application for a feasibility study done at Battleship Cove to
Correct,
do
we
all
did.
of that, but the people that own the property were not on board with the person that was bringing the
Right.
project, so it was.
We denied that
kind of
one
the same
also.
thing.
Yeah, that was a massive project
Yeah.
along the waterfront too.
And it was amazing, but if you don't have buy-in, then there's no chance of it happening.
Any other questions or discussion on this? Any motion on this?
Yeah. Convince us otherwise. Convince us otherwise. No, give us
Yeah.
something. Tell us what you think.
Well, I think it's a worthy project, but, you know, it's, I guess we'll have to wait for another time when everything is in place, I suppose. But, I guess that's it.
Any motion or
Make a motion to deny.
any?
Would you recommend a second?
So we have a motion by John and a second by Kristen to deny the application. Any discussion on this motion? All in favor of the motion? Anyone opposed to the motion? Are you in favor, Al, with this?
Withdraw.
Okay. So we have a 5-4 and 1 withdrawal. or one abstained, I mean, I'm sorry. So the motion is passed and the application is denied.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you. The very last project was submitted by Stephen Camara, was for a bond project on Purchase Street. Actually, he came to my shop today and wanted to discuss this with me, and he personally told me that he wanted to withdraw this application, and I will leave it at that. So that's our last project. Again, I will just reiterate, like, depending on your project and whether it moved forward, it's important to speak with the Historic Commission on preservation projects. It's important to speak with Bill Roth on city planning projects. It's important to speak with Nancy Smith and Chris Gallagher, actually the Nancy Smith and the Park Board for anything to do with park projects. We hope. Or cemeteries, good. Also, the grant applications, if anyone is, speak with Sandy, she has a list of grants that you can possibly apply for. Hopefully, I mean, I know they're on timeframes. A lot of times, like, it's too late to apply for it, it's too early to apply, so you have to fit the criteria exactly. I understand that, but it's very favorable on people who do fit that criteria, and it's just beneficial if you can. So, would anybody else on the board want to say anything else about the project, or anything we want to remind people that I'm not saying?
I guess we should remind them when they do, they have to have permission from what they want to do. Like the projects we had where they had no letters.
Well, that's what Jim's saying, like, for the people that would,
Yeah.
like, because it's not that the historical commission is gonna oversee most of these projects, but if it's a historical preservation project, you want letters not just from the different boards, but also other boards in the community, people that would vouch and add to that and say, look, this is.
What the value, why it's valuable.
This is why we think it's an important project, what benefit it has to the community, what groups it's gonna affect, kind of like how it reaches out in the community. So the more letters of support you have for your projects, the better that is as well.
Any other comments from our board? I would like to say that Sandy will be sending letters out to everyone that became eligible and not eligible. And the funding date, the deadline date is January 15th, 2020. So, and that will that be in the letter too, Sandy, or can we? Yeah, I think it might be a good idea.
And just one thing to keep in mind, if you need letters of support from different boards, they usually have to vote on that at their meetings, so you want to make sure that you reach out to the different boards with enough time for them to put you on the agenda, vote, and then get your letter.
Yeah, and a lot of information that, I don't know if people look at it or not, I'm not doing the funding or the eligibility application, but the Community Preservation Coalition.org is the website where all of Massachusetts can go to and get a wealth of information from this. So it's really a good resource for everybody. So, with that being said, do we have a motion?
Motion to adjourn?
I have a motion?
Before we adjourn, what are we thinking for the next meeting, at least approximately?
Good idea. So we're October 1st. You want to meet in 3 weeks possibly in October? I mean, we'll come up with anything specific we want to put on the agenda.
For the minutes from that we.
Right.
You have to go for the CPC plan that they emailed out, email everybody again.
I'll speak with Sandy. We'll come up with the agenda and send it to everyone here. And if you have anything you want to add to it, you can tell us. And if there's anything you're not happy with, you can tell us. And all we just need to do is pick a date for it. I think obviously we're coming into tough, difficult months for everybody with holidays. So I don't know if you want to do it in, like, say, 3 weeks from now.
That's probably fine. Some basic stuff we're gonna cover. The next time our applicants need to hear from us won't be clearly January.
Right. But if you do have questions, you can contact us even for that too, so Sandy's got a wealth of information also, so if you want, you can access us. Does that seem like a good date, the 22nd of October, like 3 weeks from now to like, have the next one?
Yes.
It's on a Tuesday, or we can do it the 21st, 22nd, 23rd.
22nd for now.
Does that seem good?
We'll make a motion to adjourn.
So we had a motion to adjourn, and you'll be the second then. And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you everyone for attending. Good night.